Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Apocalypse the 12. After he knocked his old team around like rag dolls, Logan, now the Horseman of Death, makes a retreat through the New York sewer system. After a few cuts, bruises, and risky telepathy, the old knucklehead seems to have returned. But Warren Worthington III may have other problems.
Speaking of problems, expect the pacing to be a bit wonky with this one. In the letters page of the previous issues, they've made a handy note which order the issues go in. But even though it has the storyline banner, Wolverine 147 is not listed.
But the next chapter, Uncanny X-Men number 377, which we'll get to later in this episode, refers to this comic's events as already taking place, so bear with me, okay, folks?
The comic is written by Fabian Nicieza and Eric Larson, accompanied on art by Roger Cruz, Derek Friedolfs, Andy Owens, and Wilson Ramos. The cover is fine enough, Archangel fighting with Logan, still dressed in his new work clothes. It gives you a decent indication of what to expect. What's really surprising is that on the first page, Warren is flying high through New York, pondering his many roles to many people throughout life, and, oh yeah, his wings are glowing.
It does feel like we missed something since this wasn't the case in the previous issue, but just like with last issue's little hiccup about how many horsemen infiltrated the mansion, I'm guessing this could be some kind of technical issue with writing or editing the issues in relation to multi-title storytelling.
Seems to be searching for something indescribable and elusive, and feeling something is different, probably besides the fact that he's gone Super Saiyan. And that's when Logan drops in. When they reach the ground, Wolvie says Angel needs to reel himself in. Reel what in from what else, I don't know. Last issue saw him look pretty agitated, like something big was about to happen, but so far he's just flown around a bit. Doesn't even look angry or incensed. But nevertheless, claws come out just the same. As Psylocke recaps efforts to bring Wolverine barely back into control, she also points out that her continued use of telepathy, even with Cerebro, risks freeing the Shadow King. But her man is in trouble, having succumbed to the blackness of his own soul.
If he's engulfed in some kind of synonym for darkness, why is he ranting about the light never dying? Why is he glowing? Stop confusing metaphors!
Wolvie seems rather surprised when he slashes at the wings and finds they're made out of light, despite, they're glowing, and apparently have been since he left the sewers. But whatever. As Betsy connects with Logan, Warren attacks with flechettes, a skill he'd lost since getting his feathers back. But now they're made of light, of course, and apparently feel like getting stabbed with the truth.
If that's the case, boy, have I got a list of people I'd like to see take a few hits.
As Jubilee lugs Kurt and Kitty out of the sewers... Wow, they put cameras in the sewers too? Convenient! She calls for some medical aid, and as it is, Dr. Moira McTaggart is not having much luck convincing Psylocke to stop her psychic monitoring. Even though Logan claims he and Archangel are still full of Apocalypse's hate, Betsy is undeterred. Warren hovers near a hospital, feeling the myriad of emotions from patients, family, staff, almost as if he's been blind to their suffering up until now. Betsy seems to reach out to him, and unintentionally, he recalls his time as Apocalypse's previous Horseman of Death, which isn't really fair since he clearly didn't ride a horse. Both he and Bets are affected by more painful memories coming to the surface, like when his metal wings molted and his feathers returned, Apocalypse's minion Ozymandias, hinting that this was the immortal tyrant's doing. After apparently losing contact with Warren, Psylocke says she's been cleansed of darkness and pain by his light.
Okay, I think I see why they're so concerned. Obviously, Apocalypse's plan was to make Archangel a profiteering televangelist.
For at least one panel, Warren's glow engulfs him completely, as he visits a cancer patient who, understandably, thinks he's taking her to see God.
Yes, but only for a brief pre-interview. His 3 o'clock cancelled, and now he has an opening.
Sometime later, Wolverine is outside the girl's room. She's still sick, but now free of pain and a fear of the dark. Worthington's transformation has thus far made him undetectable by either telepathy or Logan's senses, but he may be headed for another hospital, looking for something or someone.
Daredevil? Blue Devil? Devil Man?
Across 2 pages, Betsy again refuses to leave Logan, peering deeper into his mind and Warren's as well, witnessing the trauma of their different transformations into the same role for Apocalypse, from the strength that they needed to survive the process to the weakness they felt for succumbing. Despite their close connection, Psylocke didn't seem to know the depths of despair that Warren had been going through, but with another memory, they find out who it is their winged cohort has been searching for. Abraham Kiros, a man who wanted to walk again and let himself become Apocalypse's first horseman of war. Now he survives on the wonders of modern medicine, but unable to move or speak, and in his hospital room, Angel hovers above him.
You know, I gotta say, these life insurance salesmen these days are getting really creative with these new sales pitches.
Whatever he was going to do is interrupted by the monster under this particular bed, that being an angry Canadian that knocks Warren out of the room. I guess he already knew where A was being treated. Betsy can detect Wolvie barely controlling himself, and Warren manifesting talons that can rend the fabric of human psyche. I'm not sure if it's weirder that he can do that, or that Bets just happens to know he can do that. Anyway, Shadow King tempts his shapely warden for his freedom, claiming to have the power to return both men to their previous states. She's tempted, believing the villain speaks the truth, but Warren appears in her mind. They have a telepathic makeout session, and Betsy is finally convinced to keep the villain locked up and step away from Cerebro. As the ninja taps out, Wolverine struggles to trust what she wants him to do, and trust himself, as his brawl with Archangel comes to a standstill. At my core, I represent hope, not just for myself, but for others too.
Wait a minute. Is his skin blue because he's a Blue Lantern? Has there been a subtle DC Marvel crossover since before Blue Lanterns were even a thing? Did I just create another bogus conspiracy theory someone will probably believe and run with, even though it's all just for a dumb joke?
Warren says that the test to overcome oneself is greater than Apocalypse's survival of the fittest spiel. He suggests Logan choose hope, to trust others in order to free himself of the immortal villain and the ghosts of his past, and they both retract their handy weapons. Angel then turns to Abraham, saying he had so many questions about what's happened to him, wanting answers not just for himself, but even the former war as well, like if he'd work for En Sabanur all over again just for renewed mobility. Light fills the room briefly for a truly enlightening realization for them both. They meant truly, but missed the typo trully, and Worthington returns to his less luminescent form. And to top it off, Kiros is able to walk and speak again. Later on a rooftop, he's telling Logan that, near as he can figure, Warren used the power Apocalypse had given him to heal Abraham. However that's supposed to work. The comic ends with Logan unsure what to do next, and Worthington feeling he should start using his vast wealth to really help people.
Just don't build a bunch of crime-fighting gear in a cave and recruit teenage misfits. That's copyright infringement.
This installment was pretty meh, suffering perhaps from behind-the-scenes complications. Not really focused on the main story, so it's more like a tie-in. Not sure what made them think Warren needed to be retrieved through force to begin with, though. He was pretty chill until he was attacked, though, in fairness, I'm not sure what prevented him from outright telling anyone that his intentions weren't malicious. I did like that moment with the patient that confused him for an actual angel, how quiet he was, but it was just that, a moment, and while nice, it didn't do much to help some of the jagged pacing or confusion about Warren's new powers. For whatever reason, it all seems to be played very ambiguous, and it doesn't seem to make sense that Apocalypse of all people would grant him the ability to heal others. Though there was talk of tests and choices, so maybe he just used the power his own way instead of the way Apocalypse probably would have wanted him to.
Next, we continue with the story arc proper with Uncanny X-Men 377.
Plotted by Alan Davis, scripted by Terry Kavanagh, this issue features the art of Tom Rainey, Scott Hanna, and Brian Haberlin. The cover is not the most encouraging for our heroes, what with the main villain crashing Cyclops into the logo and apparently holding an unconscious Jean Grey by her hair.
Really, Apocalypse? You can't take over the world without resorting to hair pulling? What is this, third grade? You go sit in the corner right now and think about what you've done. And no scheming for genocide until you've learned your lesson. Do you hear me?
The issue begins with Apocalypse monologuing before his earthly servants and alien allies about how his centuries of planning and subtle manipulation have come to fruition when they detect the X-Men arriving and with them the remaining 12 of power. It's all as he had intended.
This prepared speech about how feeble I am compared to him, how inevitable my defeat is, how the world will soon be his.
Under different circumstances, this might seem overly convenient, but this isn't Zemo from Captain America Civil War. Pocky's been around for centuries, giving him ample time to study and determine the specific powers he'd need, and the optimum time to draw them forward, so it does kind of make sense.
Well, I guess he's lucky Jean didn't die. Again. Yet.
Arriving by separate plane are Professor Xavier and the surprising final name on the list of 12, Magneto. Good thing no one else noticed how only 11 names were initially mentioned at the beginning of the arc. Not even Beast, and he's the smart one.
I thought you lived at the school.
Well, they're not exactly enthused about it, but they'll have to deal, since they've got an obvious trap to fall into. The ground beneath them gives way, a brief local and clearly artificial quake that buries their rides home. The Skrulls and cultists attack, in a maneuver that Apocalypse tells himself out loud, I guess, isn't likely to prove much more than a distraction for the X-Men. A transformed Caliban and Famine teleport in to take Storm by surprise, but Charles puts the psionic kibosh on that, knocking them out and revealing they were Skrulls. This catches Baldy off guard for the real Famine and Caliban, now the Horseman of Pestilence, to grab him. Magneto tries to intervene, but then Astra and Joseph, a younger clone of Magnus, catch both his attention and anger, so he charges just as they all disappear.
Yes, Magneto had a younger clone. Yes, I forgot he appeared in this story. Maybe I'll do a review of his introduction and miniseries later on. No, I've never been to Barcelona. No, I've never made the acquaintance of a man nicknamed the Red Seagull. No, I've never seen that counterfeit money in my life. Why the interrogation? Sorry, I got a little confused there. Never mind, moving on.
Apocalypse orders the retrieval of the one absent member of his 12, Bishop, who, around this period in comics, was lost in time in his own solo title. A Skrull points out they could have captured him earlier and avoided some of this combat, but En Sabanur, in appropriately calm, intimidating fashion, notes how this too worked in his favor. Bishop's powers involve absorbing energy, including those of the temporal variety, and thanks to some secret bio-tagging before his disappearance, Bishop is brought to the present in an instant, right from the 8th issue of his solo series, chock full of time travel energy nougat.
It does seem a little weird, I'll admit, but when you think about it, it's not too outlandish given Bishop's powers, and it's at least something that could be interesting to see expanded upon, but I don't remember if they ever did. Though one wonders how Apocalypse knew about it when even Bishop didn't seem to know.
As the time traveler joins the fight, Gambit is suspicious of his convenient return, allegedly years to him, but Storm points out that this only works in Apocalypse's favor, having them fight each other. A few members of X-Force, including Cannonball and Generation X, including Jubilee, she was at the mansion, they've come by, saying Banshee called out the other teams as reinforcements, but Roro calls them to order. I noticed something really odd here. In this panel where we see Sam next to Storm, at the same time there's a silhouette in the foreground that's also supposed to be Sam, continuing his dialogue from the previous panel. That just doesn't look right. Just as it looks like Guthrie's about to cry and they're losing their perimeter, the bombastic beast bounds in. With Chuck captured and Phoenix occupied elsewhere, they can't telepathically confirm the identities of these allies, but fortunately, Hank unleashes the specialized gas he and Moira develop to revert Skrulls to their base forms.
It's true that Jean's a pretty powerful telepath at this time, and it feels like she could still figure things out somehow, but, you know, Hank's got a new gadget, and if he doesn't get to try it out, he gets all fussy.
Elsewhere in the fight, Havoc suddenly appears, much to the elation of Polaris, who runs up to see him. When Jean tries to stop her, both women are teleported away by the doppelganger, leaving Cyclops to take his frustrations out on more obvious foes. Apocalypse wants the rest of the 12 captured before they use up much more of their energy, and then divulges the process of his scheme to Xavier, from using Havoc's cells to create the living monolith to the capture of Cable, because this is what bad guys do.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing!
Given he's centuries old, it's possible that Apocalypse literally invented the boastful expository monologue we've come to expect from villains everywhere today.
Addressing Magneto, Pocky says that the Astra on the battlefield was just a Skrull, and that he dealt with the real one a while back. Not sure if she's dead or otherwise incapacitated, and he doesn't make mention of who the Joseph was, but maybe just another Skrull. He says everything will shortly be made clear, and I'm guessing he's not going to do a PowerPoint presentation, though that might actually help explain all this. Cyclops thinks that, in his rage, he blasted Colossus, who's actually calling out to him from his 6 o'clock.
Cartoons don't have to be 100% realistic.
He's then teleported away by the imposter Piotr. An impostiotor, if you will. Meanwhile, Beast's fog machine hasn't really taken much effect when Deathbird arrives, and Bishop lunges at her, with a hint of extra meaning because they were stuck together for a while drifting through space a couple years before this. No surprise, Cannonball and his group are Skrulls that then abduct Storm, with Bishop's capture following soon after. With the full dozen in custody, Apocalypse's forces begin fighting with greater fervor, as Marrow, Beast, and Gambit are joined by Rogue, Colossus, and Fizz, who's apparently picked up some English and lost his distinctive nodules, which I suppose is just an artist's error.
Either that or gold brackets chafe real bad and he had to put them in his pocket for a while. Not the best idea when your buddies are attacking an entire army of dudes that look just like you, but...
With the X-Men surrounded, the Skrull commander is confident that their superior numbers and setting weapons to kill will finish them off. But even his ally is unconvinced this will be anything more than an effective delaying tactic. And Sabanur orders his minions to get out and lock the door behind him, because the impending new world is a private matter apparently. Man, that Age of Apocalypse banner better get its oil changed, because he's getting serious mileage out of it. On a 2-page spread, he exposits on the function of each of the 12, and how they'll allow him to surpass even the Celestials in power. Magneto and Polaris acting as opposing magnetic poles for energy flow, the elemental forces of Storm, Sunfire, and Iceman, and so on. He intends to be the sun at the center of a new universe. The new Ra, the be-all and end-all to come.
I'm pretty sure that's what Dan Didio said when he was rebooting the DC universe.
The Tyrant enters another chamber, where Nate Gray, a teenage version of Cable from the Age of Apocalypse reality, is also held captive. Not in an orb like everyone else, but in some kind of antenna contraption, and he apparently plays the most crucial role in his grand plan.
Well, looks like one name somehow made it past Destiny's powers. It's less the 12 and more the 13. Though I would give this entire story a glowing review regardless of how it ended if they had renamed it Apocalypse Baker's Dozen.
Back at the X-Mansion, Team Smack Death Out of Wolverine learns from Moira McTaggart that someone has obtained the Xavier Protocols, the Prof's files on exploitable weaknesses for half the mutant population, X-Men included. They were supposedly disposed of after a previous enemy obtained them, but I guess someone else hacked the system and looked into Chuck's recycle bin. Fortunately, Kitty managed to trace the suspect to a nearby town called Valhalla, not the afterlife for Norse warrior gods, but a place 20 miles away, still within Westchester. The comic ends with the remainder of the team heading to find this hacker before going to Egypt. This happens in X-51 number 8, which follows a special agent, Jack Kubrick, looking for the titular cyborg and investigating the aftermath of Sentinels stopping through Valhalla. The events are told through eyewitness accounts, with the X-Men arriving to help out, and encountering Machine Man, whose systems have been corrupted by the mutant hunting bots. Usually on friendlier terms with the X-Crew, he accessed the Xavier Protocols as a means of getting their attention and asking their help. But his corruption leads to them fighting.
Basically having nothing to do with the main story. 2 installments left for someone to throw a proverbial monkey wrench into Apocalypse's plans. Or an actual monkey wrench. Or a monkey with a wrench, depending on how they want to play it. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.